Afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to our next session. We're now going to talk about thinking machines and jobs, and what I want to do is do a poll first before we talk about the subject we're about to enter. And the poll is really around us trying to understand your view and your feeling as to some of the things that you've heard today, and maybe your impression or the impressions that you have around what machines are doing to you in your everyday life, and how artificial intelligence is playing its role in the immediate future. So what you'll see in front of you on the table is there's a card that is facing with the blue side up. And what I want you to do is to firstly think about, should we just wait for people to come in? Should we firstly think about, would machines and would artificial intelligence change your life in a way that you think is a doomist view? So that means that things are changing against humans and that it might affect you in a negative view. So if you can take your card, and for those who have a doomist view first, please take the card and put your hands up. You do have a right to vote. Only doomist view first. 1, 2, 3. Is that it? Oh, we got more going there. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So give or take 5, 6, 7, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 8 or so. All right. So those are the doomists. Now for those who believe that artificial intelligence and machines and the role that it's going to play going into the future, those who got a lot of optimism about this. Can you please put up? Oh, well, yeah, that goes without saying. Okay, so can you just hold it up for a second, please? I never get this opportunity. So. Okay, I got it. Thank you. So that's very interesting, because the view that we normally have around the role of the machine and how it's affecting our lives is that it's going to take away all jobs and it's going to change the economics of how humans participate in economic systems. And what you see behind me at the moment is a timeline that in my mind is broken up into 3 major stages. And I'm going to talk you through 3 waves of change. The first wave is the wave that led up until the 1400s. And let's just talk about that for a second. Imagine the period just before a human figured out that they can write stuff down. Because you know there was a period like that. What were people thinking before they could write things down? From the point when we started writing things down, we became obsessed with deploying that information to the entire globe. And that's what you see behind you. We've invented technologies and we've focused on the industrial cycle of trying to find a way to get information to people in the most efficient manner. The thing about banking that is interesting is banking followed these invention cycles. Because when we used copper to mold and gold coins, banking was about that. When we invented paper and we made it available to the masses, we used paper. What do we have today? Computing, mobility, connectivity, but a lot of what we talk about today is about. And that means that this ability to connect and to transact over digital means is the wave that we're moving into now. Part of that new wave is the fact that we know that we can do things artificially. We can take some of the mundane tasks that were done by humans and we can turn those tasks into actions for machines. And that's what I want to just now use an opportunity to introduce David. I met David some years ago, and unbeknown to him, we started tracking a lot of what was happening in the innovation narrative space. So imagine getting a call from a banking client, and he said to me, I want to be innovative, and I've found a solution to be innovative. All you have to do is design a marketing campaign to tell the world that I'm innovative and all else will be fine. And I, well, what do you mean? He said, well, because banks all do the same things, all I would have to do is to convince the world through narrative that we are better than the rest and they should believe us. And did you think it worked? Absolutely it worked. Because all you have to do is design the narrative and let the world follow. So David ran a center at Stanford University called Innovation for Journalism. And we started working with him on that topic and eventually got involved into what's called Innovation for Jobs. And it's a passionate community of people in Silicon Valley and around the world who are deeply interested in trying to figure out what this thing is going to do to us in the future. So I would like to hand over to my good friend David.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, so I'm here to tell you about an actually enormous opportunity. We're going to talk about a potential market for banks and for people in the innovation sector that's larger than the entire economy today and untouched. And it's possible only now to tap it. But first we're going to do some voting here. We're going to check your attitude about jobs. So the first question is, I fear losing my job to a machine, and it's from strongly agree to strongly disagree. So you have 10 seconds to vote. You have these, by the way, these kind of BlackBerry voting machines here. So please vote now. Yeah, well, that looks good. Let's try the next question. Lots of happy people here today. I love that. My job is meaningful and engaging. Strongly agree to strongly disagree. 10 seconds. Please vote now. Brilliant. Well, we don't need to tell the group here to be happy anyway. I mean, so let's focus on the pitch. I want to introduce to you now my partner who couldn't be here today. His name is Vint Cerf. He's also known as the father of the internet. And this is his pet project. So he recorded a greeting for you, and we're going to play it for you now.
Hello, my name is Vint Cerf. I'm Google's chief internet evangelist, but right now I want to talk to you about another activity I've been involved in along with my good colleague David Nordfors, and it's called I4J, or Innovation for Jobs. We've been holding seminars for several years now. We've accumulated a group of extraordinarily eclectic people with all kinds of ideas about how we can disrupt unemployment with serious innovation to try to understand what the dynamics are of new jobs, old job destruction and new job creation in the presence of innovation. On January 28 and 29 next year, 2016, we're going to hold a summit, and we'd love to have some of you come and join us and to participate in that discussion. I know many of you are at the moment at Sibos, and I'm sorry to say that I couldn't make it, but I believe David is there. And I want to encourage you to discuss with him what may go on in that January 28-29 meeting that might attract you to participate as well. So I look forward to seeing you there. Meanwhile, I'll see you on the net.
Okay, so we're going to now talk about first the economy as it looks like today and why that is bad. And then we're going to look at the alternative, which is a small twist of the mind that we're introducing, and how that just can open everything and new business feel and actually eradicate joblessness. There will not be any people in the world without jobs. Even if it sounds ridiculous, this is the way it is. So let's look at the economy as it looks like today. I call it the task-centered economy. This is an economy that aims to minimize the cost of tasks. Okay? We want to do things cheaper, more efficiently. The game then becomes the race against the machine. We replace people with machines because they do things cheaper and more efficiently. So how does this economy look like? We can look at a company then. They automate, they sack their workforce. They can then lower the price of the goods, and they can increase the profit margin. This is the general idea. So what is the result? The result is a temporary higher profits, because of course the competitors are also going to lower the price, and automate, and then, they compete to the price down to the same profit margins. Okay? So what's on the macro level then? Well, you'll get products and services that cost less. You will have people working less and earning less. So actually, people will have more or less the same things. It's going to be the same market for purchase, but it's going to be a negative growth in dollars. So you have deflation. This is, I'd say, a loser scenario. Okay? If you believe just in automation, you're losers. Now we go to the winner scenario. Okay? This is the people-centered economy. So it's a different aim. The aim is to maximize the value of people. Okay? So the game then becomes innovation for jobs. So in short, just to explain this, I mean, if I would say, what do we need people to do? Somebody will say, oh, this or that, the caretaker and so on. And there will always be some tech optimist who's going to say, soon a machine can do that too. And then we go on looking for more answers to that question. It's the wrong question. The question is, what is the maximum value people can create? Or, even better, go from what do we need people to do to who do we need people to be? And then, you can't say that a machine can be that too. But of course, surprise, surprise, people need people. So how does this company look like? The people-centered, same scenario. You automate because, you have to automate. It's the most efficient thing to do. But what you do is that you keep the team. You keep the team and you invest in innovations that give your team new things to do that are even more valuable than the old things they did that got automated. And if you believe, like I do, that there's always some innovation, there's always possible to make an innovation that help people, whoever they are, to create more value today than what they did yesterday, regardless of what they did yesterday. If this is true, then the people-centered economy will always be the more competitive. So this company then invests in new services, leveraging on the skills, talents, and culture of the existing workforce. And they identify new markets for these skills and talents, right? That's the innovation you invest in. And then the automation you kind of just buy off the shelf. The result on the macro is that you get, or on the micro, is that the company gets permanent higher profit because you go on selling the old stuff, but now you have a new line of business. So you keep your workforce, but you increase the total profit of the company. On the macro level, it means that you're gonna actually have innovation-driven growth. Okay, so So let's see. Oh, I pushed backwards there. Let's see. So what's in it for the banks? Well, banks are actually one of the few microeconomies that care about how people earn. Most other companies care only about how people spend. Okay? So banks are the companies who would be interested in offering their customers services that helps them to earn better. You can imagine that you're a bank, you have saving accounts, you go to this innovation ecosystem that we're going to bootstrap in January. You find some company with a really good service that can help your savers earn better. So you buy that company and you give them your savings. The offer is, come to our bank, save your money here with our savings account, and we will not only help you save better, we'll help you earn better. And that will make a better customer for you and a happier customer, and it solves a microeconomic problem, by the way, or the macroeconomic problem. So the second is, of course, that this can be a pretty good investment in startups. Because if you think of how big is this market, we'll come to that later, but the market is actually incredibly large for this. And you could be the leader in this market because you are also the biggest customer, in a way, of these services because you serve the earners, the savers, right? So you earn twice. You earn by being an investor in these companies, and you earn by helping your bank customers. So why are banks special? Yeah, this is what I said. They care about how people earn, right? All other companies care only about how people spend. That makes you the good guys, you know? So the new market for banks then would be compete offering your customers services that helps them earn better in more meaningful ways. Let's look at the potential market size for this. The aim for the Innovation for Jobs ecosystem is 100% employment or equivalent, 100% worker engagement, and 100% managed talent. This means the ultimate service is I have a startup, I come to the customer and I say, I'll give you a tailored job that matches your skills, talents, passions. I'll put you together with people you like, and I'll find the best market for what you do. You're going to earn 50% more than you do today, and I'll take 20% commission. Everybody says yes to such an offer. We couldn't do it before because we didn't have the advanced matching mechanisms. But now when everybody has a smartphone, it should work. So if you look at what we have today, we have 50% employment or equivalent. We have 17% worker engagement. We have a lousy percent talent management. So if you look at the difference between that, if you would just take very simple math, that would be about 10 times the economy. You grow the total economy 10 times, right? These are hand-waving numbers. But one thing is certain is that this potential market that now opens because everybody has a smartphone is larger than the entire economy today. Okay? So I'm writing a book about this. We're a bunch of writers in this I4J network. Jay has written a book. Steve Denning is writing a book. He's in our network. John Hagel is writing a book. He's also in our network. So we are sort of going full steam for this. I'll be signing this book thing outside later on. And, we'll come back to the discussion. I've already pulled over my time. So I'd like to hand over to the millennials here, Steve and Daniel, to give their point of view.
Thanks very much, David. I'm Steve, and this is Daniel, and we co-founded Wharton FinTech. We've had a really, really great discussion with a lot of you this week, some of it on Twitter, so please follow us. But this has been a really great week for us, and we'd like to talk to you a little bit about how we think about the future of finance and where millennials and AI sort of fit into that picture.
So human beings are really bad at making decisions. We're subject to numerous cognitive biases, gambler's fallacy, recency bias, confirmation bias. My favorite bias is bias. That is, we don't even know we're biased. And this is especially true when it comes to financial decision making, because finance is so complex and it's inherently exponential, whereas we evolved in a very linear world. And because of this, banks and other consumer-facing financial institutions have had to use the heuristic of trust when it comes to engaging consumers and businesses to provide products and services. And there are differences between millennials and our parents and grandparents and how we go about deciding who to trust.
So we like to think about the old model for consumer trust, Trust 1.0, as beginning with an established brand that's built over a long period of time. People tend to feel emotionally attached to these institutions, even though common sense dictates otherwise. Secondly, the one-on-one relationship that develops between an agent and a client, which develops this environment in which the agent can sell products and services to the client, as opposed to the client actually purchasing and acquiring these services on their own. And lastly, the brick and mortar retail establishment of banks. Now we're using this old logo from HSBC. Sorry, Christoph, but the idea is that previous generations used to tie a sense of identity and an experience to going to a bank, whereas that couldn't be further from the thing that we like to do as millennials. We're starting to see an emergence of a new model for trust, Trust 2.0, that's built on technology, social mission, and our social networks. As millennials, we trust in technology. And we don't see the trade-off for lower cost as being, we don't see lower cost as being a trade-off for us. It's actually a feature. So we don't like to interact with human beings when we sign up for a Wealthfront account or when we open or take a loan from SoFi. That's actually a benefit that causes us to want to purchase and use those products and services. Our social networks now are amplifying the discussion that we have, and marketing, word-of-mouth marketing has always been the holy grail, but now the conversation is on steroids. We can access many, many more people through our social networks. And finally, a social mission that's baked into the business model of the business as opposed to a feel-good marketing campaign that's bolted onto the side for corporate social responsibility purposes.
So technology is the first pillar there, and we're not arguing that technology is all of a sudden important here. But what we are saying is that as the technology and financial services gets closer to the end consumer, the way the consumer interacts with that technology becomes ever more important. And the way that millennials are interacting with technology is unprecedented, and it's impacting the behavior of our parents and grandparents as well. The Millennial Disruption Index, from where we got this graphic, was a research piece done by Scratch, and they found that banks are the category of company most likely to be disrupted by millennial consumer preferences, specifically as it relates to technology. Steve and I like to say that the banks of the future won't have customers, they'll have users. What this means is that millennials want to have machines manage our money, drive our cars, make credit decisions. We want this stuff to be a part of our life, and that's affecting all parts of society.
We're still fundamentally the same in that we trust people, but as I mentioned before, the amount of people that we can trust has been magnified by the proliferation of social networks. So Nielsen says that 92% of consumers trust recommendations from friends and family, whereas 33% trust ads. 3/4 of people are informing their three-quarters of people are informing their consumer decisions based on social media. So the bottom line is millennials are using social media to fuel their purchasing decisions. And in fact, the companies on the right, Tilt and Venmo, are not using social media to actually acquire their customers. It's actually built into the product.
So in his company's S1 filing this morning, Square founder and CEO Jack Dorsey said that creating more inclusion and greater equality in the global economy is both a social need and a huge business opportunity. And the founders that we talk to every day describe similarly lofty motivations for starting their companies. And this is not just because the current financial system leaves so many consumers and businesses without access to all the products and services that they need, but because these mission-driven values and principles really resonate with millennials. And because this stuff is baked into these companies from the very beginning, it's part of their DNA, it's totally natural for the CEO and founder to be telling the world about all the good they're doing. It doesn't come across as self-serving.
I really like this quote because a month later, Blockbuster filed for bankruptcy. So essentially what we're talking about here is the fact that this is a... Sorry, you want to take it?
Yeah, go ahead. So you may have been wondering when we got up here to talk about millennials, what this has to do in a panel with artificial intelligence. And the reason is that the future isn't binary. It's not about people versus machines. It's about how people and machines are going to be working together. And if we as leaders in financial services don't understand the employees and the consumers that are going to be interacting with this technology, then we're not going to be able to realize the bounty that AI can bring to the world of finance. So that's why it's important to understand millennials. That's why it's important to understand people.
And what we're talking about here at Sibos, and a lot of people have probably heard about this, disruption and innovation are buzzwords that are seeping into the corporate lexicon, but the ethos can often lag behind. So Daniel and I grew up in an analog world. We knew what it was like before we had computers in our homes, smartphones in our pockets. We actually used phone books and encyclopedias, and now these things are tied to our hands. We're constantly communicating with our friends, and in fact, Daniel's going to just take a selfie, and then we're going to tweet it real quick. So this is a fundamentally different trust model that we're talking about here, and this is not necessarily about age, right? This is about understanding your users, and it's about trust.
Thanks.
All right, thanks, guys. Great job. I'm Hamilton from Collective Next, for those of you I've not met. It's funny, Dan and Steve have been referred to as the Millennials so long. I think you guys are the only two Millennials that exist. Is that right? Are there others out there? Apparently people are going to be competing for your business in the future. So we want to do a little bit of an exercise. You've heard a lot from Jay, from David, from Daniel and Steve. We're passing out envelopes right now, and we came up with a couple of scenarios. Artificial intelligence, machines replacing jobs, performing tasks that maybe had been done by people in the past, or new jobs, new tasks being done. And so an envelope is coming around. For those of you in the back, maybe just pile around. You guys are going to have big teams back there, but that's all right. And here's what we want to do. We're going to give you about 8 minutes, and we're going to have you read your scenario and discuss it. For instance, one of the scenarios is, what if a bank actually turned customers from savers into earners, like David talked about, right? What does that scenario really mean? So we want you to discuss these scenarios. There's a couple more. And then answer, do you think it's going to happen? Do you think really, do you think it's going to happen? A, do you think banks are going to be able to change their mindset and their culture to be able to embrace this new idea? And do you want it to happen? Is that something that you think, as someone who runs a bank, is that something you would want to happen? That's one of the scenarios. So how likely is this to happen, and do you want this to happen? And then we want you to talk about, are there other scenarios where AI and banking can do two things? I think the mindset is, and David talked about this as well, efficiency. How can we do things more efficiently, quicker, more cheaply? But where are the new markets? Where are the new markets that you think AI could open to banks to grow new revenue streams, to create new services, to create new experiences for your customers? So brainstorm that. And then we also want to know, it's important for you guys, how can banks in all of this, and not even this session, you saw Watson this morning, you heard about the Voice of Customer 3.0, Jay was part of that. How can banks ensure that they are successful in this new world? You all said you were optimists, except for a few of you who didn't lie. How can we make sure that banks are successful? What steps you need to take to make sure you're successful? That's something we'd like for you to talk about. And then finally, what are the functions, what are those things that exist in financial services that should never be automated, that could never be automated? All right, so we want you guys to have a good discussion. If for some reason you're in the back and you don't get an envelope with a scenario, talk about everything for 2, 3, and 4. Don't worry about your scenario. All right, we're going to give you 8 minutes, all the time you need in the next 8 minutes to go through this assignment, to have a great discussion, and then we'll do a little bit of report out and a close. All right, get started. So each of you actually got 4 scenarios, 4 different scenarios in your envelope. Pick the one that you want to talk about. Pick one scenario that you want to talk about, and go from there. All right, guys, we're going to give you about 30 more seconds. About 30 more seconds to have your good conversation, then we're going to do a little report out. Five minutes. All right, guys, so let's have your attention again. Thank you for engaging in that. So I'm going to assume, with the optimism that we all showed earlier, that there's you feel like there's a likelihood that some of these will happen, and then there's a desire on some degree. And looking around at some of the tables, I saw a lot of 4s and 5s. So what I want to know, I want to talk about two things before we have a broader conversation, is what were some of the new markets that you all talked about when it comes to AI and banking? And I'm wondering if I could just call on a table and put somebody on the spot. Who over here? Who's got one? I'll get to you in a second. How about anybody over here want to share new markets? You guys write anything down? Yeah, perfect.
So we reckon that AI can provide access to the unbanked much more effectively. You can start to aggregate, because they're all carrying smartphones, they don't have bank accounts, so analytics, big data analytics can start to uncover that.
Right. And because of the low cost in some ways, it can also make it profitable as well. You got it back there, Mary? All right.
We have a wonderful idea. I think there is a huge business. We think there is a huge business opportunity on the intersection of Internet of Things and banking. If banks have the way to own the data that Internet of Things produces, then there is a way to continuously monitor in real time resources usage and proactively offer financing and credit to replace the resources that are being depleted.
So it's that sort of instant monitoring and also then turning that into advice and guidance. That's great. Back to him, sorry, I missed not just guidance, but...
Not just guidance, way better than that.
Credit.
The actual credit and proactive financing. Instead of me coming to a bank asking for the money to replace the refrigerator, the bank knows when I will need one.
All right. Anybody over here want to share an open and new market? Did anybody get to that? Yeah? I saw you raise your hand. Do you raise your hand? Yeah? Could you pass that back?
I kind of half-raised my hand because I don't know if this is a new market or a new service or what, but we had a millennial on our team, so
Ooh.
I speak with authority.
Wow. They're rare in these parts.
And we identified two things. One, referring back to Watson this morning, the chap spoke to Watson on his mobile phone, arrived at the Orchard Street branch, and Watson knew he was coming. We took that to be knowing the customer's immediate need as you walk in through the door of the bank. And the other one we had was, this might be a useful service, and I'll quote what our millennial said, you want to know when you're going to be bankrupt. Warning the customer, advising the customer, telling the customer how their finances are changing over time.
So that predictive analytics.
Predictive analytics,
right.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. All right. So what about, and maybe Liz, can you grab that? So there was a question this morning. We had Matthias Kroner from Fedor, and he's an amazing bank. And then someone from, I will call it a big bank, said it's nice for you because you were in a greenfield, right? You got to just reinvent banking from the ground up. What about us old banks, right? And some of the brands we saw up for the Trust 1.0 point. So this is a new frontier for banks, right? In an industry heavily regulated, not known for their speed and nimbleness. How can banks ensure that as this proliferation of AI comes, that they're successful? Anybody talk about that? We got right there in the back, and then we'll start with you, and then we'll get to you second, just because he's closer. Yeah.
Establish a Trojan bank to do it outside of legacy.
Wow, like Fedor. Yeah.
So really know your customer. What are the customer's preferences? What are their relationships? What are their beliefs? If you want to market to them and connect them to new earning opportunities and the like, really know them.
Really know you. Really engage your customers. We got one up here.
I would add realize it's actually not that far off.
Sorry.
I would add that we would realize it's not that far off from what we currently do. And by that I mean, I was just talking around this table and saying for some of our small business loans or some of our more smaller value loans, the process is fully machined already. So we're not having a person adjudicate it. It's done through various scoring. So this isn't that big of a mind leap to do. And I think once you open it up to that, you kind of get a lot more comfortable with it.
And start trying new things and realize you're already doing a lot of this. That's right. There in the back, yeah?
We talked about around our table that it's very important, though not achievable, I think, to have complete transparency in what data is collected and how this data is analyzed. Without this in place, at least smart people, be they millennials or old guys like I, will never trust.
Right, and that's
what's
the key,
happening.
right? Trust. So transparency with how you're doing. Jay, you know, Jay, I'm gonna use this as a segue for you to come back up here. So
I was just going to add something. I want to ask a question about this, and that is that when you refer to customer centricity, and we spoke about that earlier, what still strikes me as something that is missing, and we heard a comment earlier that maybe banks do this already. Why does a bank not know about my entire family immediately, or about who I work for, or who my friends are, or all the other people around in my life? Why would they have to KYC and onboard the entire network once again? So I'm not convinced that we're quite there yet. I was just going to make a comment to say that I think that artificial intelligence is just starting to make sense. But the question is, do we need artificial intelligence or just a little bit of intelligence to figure out that somebody has got a family? I'm not sure, but you guys get the problem.
Yeah.
So we're going to now move into a brief panel discussion, but I just want to ask one question before we start. Did anybody look at the scenario using AI to connect human to human in banks? Was that a discussion at any of the tables? Can we get, I just want to,
so I don't think we've sort of put it on paper, but the thought really was that the whole we see so many scenarios of new startups and new emerging fintech firms. If you observe quite a few of them, the common principle is building communities. Okay, and that is something banks have not done it. I mean, they have millions and millions of customers. They're always oriented towards selling, but have they leveraged the real capabilities of the customer community and building some specialized communities, and that in turn can sort of enhance the product and services. It could be advisory. I mean, there could be so many advisors as customers of the bank, for example. Okay, probably banks have not looked at that dimensions or explored that dimension. Just adding to the point that you mentioned, in terms of artificial intelligence versus little intelligence, I have posed this question to many, saying, why don't you simply ask customers? You go and sell to the customers. If you ask, they might have certain biases or they might not be clear, but at least they'll give you a very direct indication in terms of what exactly they're looking for. Okay, so that's probably more simplified way of rather than investing so much in technology. The first step is asking customer. Okay, we don't ask.
Great. Was that because you had a millennial on your team? We got one more.
Hi. I think banks have done, humans could be humans, us, consumers, but humans also between employees and consumers. I think as humans, customers interacting with a bank, I think the banks have done a lot of work into automating their processes of understanding client transaction, reviewing it, identifying risk issues, etc. So humans as customers and humans in the bank have some sort of a more electronic, easier communication methods now. But as humans altogether, as consumers interacting through different channels, banks are, let's say, trying to protect their own customers and not trying to share this with another bank. So the different infrastructure, the different ways of banks trying to introduce a new communication, payment methods, etc., the scattering of these initiatives are creating more humans to be far from each other, not able to interact with each other. So I think it's about, everybody thinks about as a startup or a big bank or a SME, trying to think about making money out of these initiatives. So I heard the money angle quite a lot here. But what people are missing it is that, can we create one platform that makes sense for everybody, and everybody tap into it, and we can all make money in the end. Money is the end game, but it's something that will come eventually. But we need to know how to approach it and where to approach it.
It's a great one, and I think we get back to that later with the innovation for jobs. What I want to do is, Christoph's with HSBC and has been thinking about this quite a bit, and I would like to get your views on some of these things.
Okay. You know, I think that when you look at the macro level, the story of jobs and AI, I think you still have a certain doomist view. Because if you think about your children, I mean, you think, in what world are they going to live and how are they going to find their place as job holders in the society? So that is a concern. So at the macro level, I think it's difficult not to be a bit doomist. On the micro level, now when I look at the different businesses and activities, I think it's extremely reassuring. And let me take the example of financial services, which I know well. Between 1995 and 2015, 50% of the banks in the US have disappeared. So we went from 14,000 to 7,000. And still the number of jobs in the US from 95 to 2015 have increased by 1 million in the financial services. So clearly, in the financial services, we are very good at creating jobs. Now, how do we do that? Very often, the way in financial services we create jobs is through a mix of university work, theoretical work, and regulation. And I want to take the example of swaps, for example, and all the derivatives. During the 70s, there was massive regulation on foreign exchange, exchanging between countries, massive regulations. At the same time, three Nobel Prize, Scholz, Merton, and Black, developed all this theory about option pricing and non-arbitrage. And this converged progressively during the 80s to create a massive market. When I wrote a book on swaps in 95, the market of swaps was a few $1 trillion. It is now $600 trillion. So that's how you create, through a mix of initial catalysts, a fantastic industry. And we can decline that with many other examples. The ATM machine is another example. The ETFs market, which is revolutionizing currently the fund management industry, but also is going to be a new catalyst for the robo-advisors, because the robo-advisors are capitalizing on the extremely low cost of ETFs. So I think, you know, when I look at the micro, when I look at, and I am sure that in electricity, in automaking, they all look at their business and they say, well, of course, we're going to create jobs. And that reassures me a lot. So macro level, I think it's difficult because the society is going to change. Micro level, I look at my personal experience on finance. I think we have a lot more to do.
Okay. So could I ask you a question around HSBC's initiative around jobs around the world? Do you think that it should be on an innovation agenda to have that as one of the topics that you focus on? Because I think that a lot of the topics at the moment are just around automation. Is that something that is worth thinking about?
That's a tricky question.
So I wasn't meant to be a trick question.
No, but I mean, a company is composed of three elements. There is the human, a part of a company. There are the shareholders, and there are the customers. And, you know, we need to put customer, employees first. That's very important. And shareholder as well, but it really depends on the stage at which each of these have looked at. Now, if I look at our priorities, definitely data, and it's been mentioned many times, is a priority. And for me, it's a priority because we need to help our customers with their data. We have plenty of data on our customers. How can we help them with this data? I think there is fantastic capacity of expansion there. Digital identity is a big topic, and it's a big topic for financial inclusion, so I think that should be on the top of our mind. Then there is a topic around security, cybersecurity, fraud, surveillance. If our clients are not secure, if we cannot create to them APIs that are secure, then we have a big problem, and we are not going to be able to grow this business as much as we want. These are three topics that are very important, and a fourth one, which for me is key as well, is we are going to reinvent our business and develop our business through offering very more specialized service vertically. So how do we adapt to the lawyers market? How do we adapt to the merchant market and so on? With technology, you're able to much more focus your offer to very specific niche, while at the same time having a very global platform. So I think this is something which is important because we need to serve our clients better, to help them do better. And to come back to you, I think we need to help them earn more. That's the goal.
Sure, great. From the millennials, can we get some comments around the scenarios and the feedback that you heard? Is there any feedback you guys want to give on that?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I have a microphone. So.
You're pretty connected.
Yeah, so
you forgot you were connected. You're a millennial.
Yeah, millennial. It's always on. So one of the interesting things we talked about was that going through the scenario, we were all taking for granted that this stuff was happening, that the technology is either there or imminent, and that people are going to want to use it. The stuff that we were thinking about was, where are the risks? Research shows that millennials are way more likely to put their data out there and be kind of blasé about what happens to it. We're way more likely to have our data breached, yet we're not really paying attention to the risks that we're putting ourselves through when we do this. And so having incredibly tight data security isn't going to make this happen, but it's going to prevent it from becoming an issue. It's going to prevent the problems from arising. And our scenario was about what are the ethical implications of this stuff. And I'm a big believer in the idea that if you don't have somebody very high up in your organization whose livelihood depends on something, it's not going to get done. So if there's nobody in your organization who is staying up at night worrying about the data security and the ethical implications of all this information you have on millions of people, there are going to be issues. So most of the stuff we talked about was kind of like the sad, risky stuff, not the cool, exciting stuff that we're supposed to be discussing.
So do you think millennials believe in the central structure?
I think we take it for granted. I don't even think it's something that we tend to think about.
You say people like us must do that and you guys do other things?
Yeah, I mean, so Steve mentioned, right, that he and I are like kind of older millennials, right? So we came of age during the transition from analog to digital, or the ubiquity thereof. And so we've kind of seen what the world was like before we were glued to our phones. And yeah, we kind of take it for granted. We're not even really asking these questions anymore. We're just kind of like impatient,
Must this be
now.
So you want those things just to be taken care of by the previous or some other people or some other generation, so that all the new things can be done?
I don't think it's about another generation. I mean,
I just want to figure out, how do we as the banking community figure out how that works? Because I think that we talk about millennials and we talk about jobs and so on. Yesterday we had a conversation around what does a job mean to somebody that's at a different age, who the concept of multiple careers and so on just makes sense.
Right. And we were talking about it's not necessarily what our job title is and what we do, but who we are as people. And I think to answer your first point about what our expectations are with respect to security and protecting the data that we are generating in orders of magnitude greater numbers than previous generations about ourselves and putting it online very freely. We just want it to work. So to the extent that we have to opt in and use more passwords or more complicated multi-factor authorization, that's the world that we're entering into. So making that easy in the user experience, and this is why we keep using the term user as opposed to client or customer, because we're using this technology, we're using these services. So understanding UX and having someone at very high level in a financial organization who's dedicated to design is not something that an executive committee was ever typically focused on. But if you go, and most of the fintech startups that we talked to today, if you go to Silicon Valley, if you go to London, if you go to New York, Silicon Alley, there will be a chief design officer or someone whose specific job is to understand what the user's experience is traveling through a product and making it as seamless as possible. So I think that's really how we like to think about it.
Great, thanks. So now we got all of these inputs. I would like to hear David's view on all these things that have happened, because it puts an interesting view on things. And I just wanted to check with you, do you think we can have an AI engine where we can automate the automatic matchmaking of jobs and skills?
Yes, I mean,
there was a sort of a leadiness to a challenging question.
Well, I mean, technology should ideally, bring people together and not push them apart. And I think that, the guidance principles, it's like a drawback with economics today is that it doesn't include a you. Everything in economics is an it. But, meaning in life is like interpersonal relations. It's the people around us. That's not in the economics. So, I mean, ordinary people, they earn money. These are the means in order to create meaning, which is build family and so on. But in economics, since you don't have a you in it, you have to define meaning otherwise. So then you define meaning as the maximizing the means. And then we get all the bull crap that we have today. So we need to kind of reform the economics. Another thing we need to see is that, we need to realize all people can create value. We only need an economy that makes it happen. Okay? We can do that with the technology we have today if we think that way. It's another thing we need to think of is that a job is a need. We need to redefine job as a need. The customer needs a job. Who's going to serve the customer? Majority of the world's population today want a good job. They don't have one. Who's going to serve them? Employment is one way of trying to satisfy that need. That's a contract. There are lots of others. Go out there and invent. It is the biggest market waiting to happen. And now for the first time, we have the technology to make it happen. And you guys here have the incentive to make people earn more. So let's say if you come to us in January, okay, in Silicon Valley, in the I4J Eco conference, where we put together CEOs of startups and investors and bankers and policy people, we could discuss, for example, you could say you want to go in with a few $1 million in a seed fund. We can go to the government and say, do you want to match that? For them, it's easy. Today, they cannot invest unemployment money in innovation because innovation can destroy jobs. But if you say, we want to have services for our banks that will help our customers earn more and that makes business sense to us, well, then you're the guy with a big stick, and maybe the governments can match that, right? And if you have US today, we spend $40 billion a year in cash to people who can't get jobs. If the government had a safe way of investing that in innovation for jobs, they took 1% and they matched that with 1% private capital, that would create about $800 million. And the total investment in seed in the US in 1 year is about $700 million. So, I mean, there are lots and lots of enormous business opportunities waiting to be done. So I would like to invite you to go to our page, i4j.info, and read more. I would like to invite you to come to the summit in Silicon Valley. You can see some of the people there. Vint is going to be there for 2 days. Yossi Vardi, Jay is going to be there. How about that? And lots and lots of good people. We want to have you there too, to have these type of discussions and maybe settle some deals. Discuss, can we create a fund like that? There you go. Thank you.
Great, David. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
All right. So, So some quick thanks. Let's thank Jay from Innosect. Please go check out Innosect. They're doing great work. Check out, David did it, but i4j.org, right? Yes?
No. i4j.org is innovation for Jesus. It's i4j.info.
Well, I'll let you choose which one you want to go to. i4j.info.
Yeah.
Check out Wharton FinTech. These guys are great, are doing amazing work, are really connecting a lot of great people. They could use your help and your eyes on their site. So check out Wharton FinTech. It'd be great. David's signing his book outside. Did I forget? Thank you, Christoph. Check out HSBC if you've not heard of them. They're great. David's signing his book outside. Please rate the session. I would invite you to take these little things back to your kids if you want them. This is a souvenir from this session. These are not souvenirs from this session, so please leave these behind. Feel free to take these scenarios if you want to, but please leave your templates because we're going to capture them. I'm totally getting the wrap-up sign. All right, come back, oh my gosh, in 12 minutes for our closing, or not the closing, but our last session in Innotribe, and goodbye. Thank you.